Barry Gibb never knew his song saved another artist's life. Chapter 1. The Unexpected Call. Miami, Florida. March 2024. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Barry Gibb's home studio, casting golden streaks across the vintage synthesizers and framed platinum records that lined the walls. At 77, Barry had learned to appreciate the quieter moments, the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of waves from Biscayne Bay, the gentle creak of his leather chair as he leaned back with a cup of tea. He was reviewing demos sent by a young producer when his phone buzzed. The name on the screen made him pause. Richard Ashford, his manager of 15 years. "Richard," Barry answered, his voice still carrying that unmistakable falsetto edge even in conversation. "Barry, I need you to sit down for this one." Richard's tone was unusually serious. "I'm already sitting," Barry replied with a slight smile. "What's going on?" "I just got off the phone with someone from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're organizing a special tribute event in Cleveland next month. Songs that changed lives. They want you there." Barry frowned slightly. He'd been to dozens of tributes over the decades. "That's kind, Richard, but you know how I feel about these things. They're lovely, but this one's different," Richard interrupted. "Someone specifically requested you. An artist who says one of your songs saved their life. They want to tell you in person. They won't do the event unless you're there." Barry set his tea down slowly. "Who? They won't say yet. But Barry, this person is serious. This isn't publicity. They told the Hall of Fame organizers that if you can't make it, they'll withdraw entirely. They said it has to be you, face to face." A long silence stretched between them. Barry looked out the window at the palm trees swaying in the breeze. He'd heard many things over the years, fans saying his music got them through breakups, through loss, through loneliness. But something about this felt different, more urgent, more raw. "What song?" Barry asked quietly. They didn't specify, just that it was yours. Barry exhaled slowly. His mind raced through decades of melodies, songs written with his brothers, songs written alone in the years after their deaths, songs that had traveled the world in ways he never anticipated. When is it? April 12th, Cleveland. Black tie event, but intimate. Maybe 200 people. The artist will speak, then you'll have a private moment afterward if you want it. Barry closed his eyes. He thought of Maurice, gone since 2003. He thought of Robin, lost in 2012. He thought of all the music they'd created together, the harmonies that had once filled stadiums and now lived only in recordings and memories. "Tell them I'll be there," Barry said finally. "You sure? I can ask for more details." "No," Barry interrupted gently. "If someone needs to say something to me, I should listen. That's the least I can do." After hanging up, Barry sat in the stillness of his studio. His eyes drifted to a photograph on the wall. The three Gibb brothers in 1977, young and invincible, at the height of their fame. He wondered which song it was. "How Deep Is Your Love?" "Stayin' Alive?" Something older, perhaps, from their early days. He picked up his acoustic guitar, fingers finding the familiar chords of "To Love Somebody Without Thinking." The song poured out of him like a prayer, his voice still strong, still aching with the emotion he'd felt when he first wrote it decades ago. As he played, Barry realized something. He'd spent so much of his life creating music, sending it out into the world like messages in bottles, but he'd rarely known where those bottles landed or whose hands pulled them from the waves. Now, someone wanted to tell him. And for the first time in years, Barry Gibb felt genuinely nervous. Chapter 2. The Weight of Silence. Los Angeles, California. Same day. 3,000 miles west, in a modest Laurel Canyon bungalow. Morgan Ellis sat on the edge of an unmade bed, staring at a phone that felt impossibly heavy. At 42, Morgan had the kind of face that magazines called timeless. Sharp cheekbones, expressive eyes, a mouth that could shift from vulnerability to defiance in a heartbeat. 2 decades in the music industry had given Morgan a platinum album, a Grammy nomination, and a reputation for soulful, confessional songwriting that critics loved and audiences devoured. It had also given Morgan a prescription pill habit, 3 stints in rehab, and a career that had been on life support for the past 5 years. The phone call to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame had taken every ounce of courage Morgan possessed. Even now, the representative's words echoed. He said yes. Barry Gibb will be there. Morgan's hands trembled slightly. This was real now. No turning back. The guitar leaning against the wall caught Morgan's eye, a battered Fender that had survived every tour, every breakdown, every moment when music was the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. Next to it, on a small wooden table, sat a vinyl record in a worn sleeve. Bee Gees' Odessa, 1969. Morgan walked over and picked it up carefully, fingers tracing the album cover. The record had been purchased at a thrift store in Nashville in 2019, during the worst period of Morgan's life. It cost $3. It had been worth infinitely more. 5 years earlier, Nashville, Tennessee, November 2019. Morgan had been 37 then, freshly out of rehab for the second time, and utterly alone. The label had dropped the contract. The manager had moved on to younger, less complicated clients. The so-called friends had stopped returning calls. The apartment in Nashville was temporary, sublet from a session musician who pitied Morgan enough to offer a below-market rate. It was a 1-bedroom with thin walls, stained carpet, and a view of a parking lot. Morgan had exactly $800 left, and no plan beyond making it through each day. Music felt impossible. The guitar sat untouched. The notebooks filled with half-written lyrics remained closed. Every melody that tried to surface was drowned out by a crushing inner voice that whispered the same message on repeat. You're finished. You're worthless. Everyone would be better off without you. On a grey Tuesday afternoon in November, Morgan walked to a thrift store 6 blocks away. There was no reason, no destination in mind, just movement to escape the suffocating stillness of the apartment. The store smelled like dust and old fabric softener. A clerk with purple hair nodded from behind the counter, barely looking up from her phone. Morgan wandered past racks of faded jeans and chipped dishware, feeling invisible and strangely grateful for it. In the back corner, a cardboard box overflowed with vinyl records. Most were scratched beyond playability, but Morgan's hands moved through them anyway, needing something to do, some small task, to justify existing. Then, Odessa, by the Bee Gees. Morgan pulled it out. The cover showed the brothers in dramatic lighting, serious and artistic. Morgan had heard their hits, of course. Everyone had. But this album was unfamiliar. $3 seemed reasonable. There was a record player in the apartment, left behind by the sublet owner. Back home, Morgan placed the record on the turntable with no expectations. The needle dropped. Static crackled. Then, I've been crying all day long. The voice, Barry Gibb's voice, poured into the room like light through a crack in a wall. The song was melody fair, fragile and haunting, speaking about loneliness and longing with such naked honesty that Morgan's breath caught. Morgan sat on the floor and listened, then listened again, then flipped the record and kept listening. Track after track, the Bee Gees sang about heartbreak, isolation, searching for meaning, losing, and finding hope. The harmonies were impossibly beautiful. The melodies ached, and Barry's voice, especially Barry's voice, seemed to understand something fundamental about suffering that Morgan had never heard articulated so perfectly. For the first time in months, Morgan felt less alone. That night, instead of staring at the ceiling until dawn, Morgan fell asleep with the record still spinning, the final notes of lamplight fading into silence. The next morning, Morgan picked up the guitar. Bam! Present day. Morgan set the record down gently, as if it were made of glass. The years since that November had been hard-won. Sobriety, therapy, small gigs at coffee shops and dive bars, slowly rebuilding a relationship with music that wasn't about fame or validation, but about survival and truth. An independent label had taken a chance last year. A new EP had quietly resonated with people who understood what it meant to fall apart and try to put yourself back together. Critics called it a raw, unflinching return to form, but none of that would have happened without that record. Without Barry Gibb's voice reaching across decades to tell Morgan, "You're not alone. Keep going." Now, Morgan had the chance to say thank you. The question was, how do you tell someone they saved your life when they don't even know you exist? Chapter 3. Journeys to Cleveland. April 11th, 2024. Miami to Cleveland. Barry Gibb settled into his first-class seat, watching Miami shrink beneath him as the plane climbed through wisps of cloud. Richard sat beside him, already reviewing notes on his tablet about the event schedule. "You're quiet," Richard observed. "Just thinking," Barry replied, his gaze still on the window. "About tomorrow?" Barry nodded. "I've been trying to guess who it might be. I keep running through everyone I've met, everyone I've worked with. I can't figure it out." Richard smiled slightly. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe it's someone whose life you touched without ever meeting them." "That seems unlikely. The hall wouldn't organize something like this for a fan letter." "No," Richard agreed, "but it could be someone in the industry you've influenced. Another artist. Someone who's been watching from a distance." Barry considered this. Over the decades, he'd collaborated with dozens of musicians, written songs for hundreds more, crossed paths with legends and newcomers alike. But someone who said his music saved their life. That felt intensely personal, intimate. "What if I don't know what to say?" Barry asked quietly. Richard looked at him with genuine warmth. "Barry, you've been writing songs about the human heart for 50 years. You'll know what to say." The plane leveled off. Barry closed his eyes, letting his mind drift through memories, recording studios in London, stages in Sydney, late nights in Los Angeles with his brothers, arguing over harmonies and laughing until their sides hurt. Music had been his language, his refuge, his gift to the world. He'd never quite believed it was enough. But maybe tomorrow he'd learn it was more than he knew. The same day, Los Angeles to Cleveland. Morgan's flight was delayed by an hour, which felt like a cosmic test of nerve. The airport bar was tempting, just one drink to calm the anxiety, but Morgan ordered coffee instead and sat near the gate, headphones on, listening to Odessa for what must have been the 1,000th time. The decision to reach out to the Hall of Fame had come after months of internal debate. Morgan's therapist, Dr. Catherine Chen, had encouraged it during a session 3 months prior. "You talk about this album like it's a lifeline," Dr. Chen had said. "Have you ever considered telling Barry Gibb what it meant to you?" "He doesn't know I exist," Morgan replied. "Why would he care?" "Why wouldn't he?" Dr. Chen countered. "You're a musician. You know what it's like to create something and send it into the world hoping it matters. What if someone told you your music saved them?" Morgan had gone silent, thinking of the messages that occasionally came through social media. People saying the new EP helped them through a divorce, a loss, a dark night. Those messages meant everything. "It would mean the world," Morgan admitted finally. "Then maybe it would mean the world to him too." Now, sitting in the airport with Cleveland just hours away, Morgan felt the full weight of that decision. This wasn't just about gratitude. It was about vulnerability, about standing in front of a legend and saying, "I was broken, and your voice helped me stay alive." The boarding announcement crackled over the speakers. Morgan stood, slinging a carry-on over one shoulder, and joined the line. Tomorrow, everything would change. April 12, 2024, Cleveland, Ohio. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame rose against the Cleveland skyline like a glass pyramid, reflecting the grey waters of Lake Erie. Inside, the Songs That Changed Lives event was being prepared with meticulous care. Round tables draped in black cloth, a small stage with warm lighting, a screen for presentations. Barry arrived in the early afternoon, escorted through a side entrance to avoid any early press. The hall's director, a woman named Vanessa Ortiz, greeted him with a firm handshake and a genuine smile. Mr. Gibb, thank you so much for coming. This means everything. Please, call me Barry, he said warmly. I'm honored to be here, though I'll admit I'm still mystified. Vanessa's smile softened. You'll understand soon. The artist asked to meet you privately before the event. They're waiting in the green room whenever you're ready. Barry's heart rate picked up. Now, if you'd like. He glanced at Richard, who nodded encouragingly. I'll wait out here. Barry followed Vanessa down a quiet corridor lined with photographs of music legends. Chuck Berry, Aretha Franklin, David Bowie. He wondered if he looked as nervous as he felt. Vanessa stopped at a door marked Green Room and knocked gently. They're ready for you. She opened the door and stepped aside. Barry walked in. Standing by the window, silhouetted against the grey light of Lake Erie, was a figure he didn't immediately recognize. Medium height, dark jeans, a simple white shirt, short dark hair touched with grey at the temples. The person turned. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Barry saw everything. The vulnerability, the gratitude, the trembling courage it took to be standing in this room. Mr. Gibb, Morgan said, voice barely above a whisper. My name is Morgan Ellis. Thank you for coming. Barry's face softened into a gentle, searching expression. Morgan Ellis, he repeated quietly. The name unfamiliar, but the tone welcoming. I'm sorry. I don't think we've met before. We haven't, Morgan said, taking a small step forward, hands clasped tightly together. But your music and I have known each other for a long time. Barry waited, saying nothing, creating space for whatever needed to come next. Morgan took a breath. I asked you here because I need to tell you something I should have said years ago. One of your songs saved my life, and you never knew. The room fell silent, except for the faint hum of the building's ventilation. Barry's eyes glistened. Tell me, he said softly, and Morgan did. Chapter 4. The Truth Between Notes. Morgan gestured to 2 chairs near the window. Can we sit? Barry nodded, lowering himself into one while Morgan took the other. Outside, Lake Erie stretched grey and restless under a cloudy sky. I don't know where to start, Morgan admitted, rubbing palms against denim-clad thighs. Start anywhere, Barry said gently. I'm listening. Morgan looked down, gathering courage, then back up. 5 years ago, I was at the lowest point of my life. I'd lost my record deal, my manager, most of my friends. I was out of rehab for the second time, living in a sublet apartment in Nashville, with almost no money and no idea what came next. Barry's expression remained open, compassionate, without a trace of judgment. I was completely alone, Morgan continued, voice strengthening slightly. And I was convinced, truly convinced, that I had nothing left to offer the world, that everyone would be better off if I just stopped existing. Barry's eyes closed briefly, a flicker of pain crossing his face. I wasn't making music anymore. I couldn't even pick up a guitar without feeling like a failure. And then, one afternoon, I went to a thrift store for no particular reason, just to get out of that apartment, and I found a record in a box of used vinyl. Which record? Barry asked quietly. Odessa, Morgan said. Your 1969 album. I'd never heard it before. I knew the hits, of course. Everyone knows Stayin' Alive and How Deep Is Your Love, but this was different. I bought it for $3 and took it home. Morgan paused, emotion catching in their throat. I put it on the turntable, not expecting anything, and then Melody Fair started playing. Barry's breath hitched almost imperceptibly. That song, one of his most personal, written in a period of his own uncertainty and searching. Your voice, Morgan said, eyes shining now with tears that hadn't yet fallen. The way you sang about loneliness, about needing connection, about feeling lost. It was like you were singing directly to me, like you understood exactly what I was going through. A single tear slipped down Morgan's cheek. I listened to that album on repeat for hours, then days, then weeks. And slowly, so slowly, I started to believe that if someone could make something that beautiful out of pain, maybe I could too. Maybe I wasn't finished. Maybe there was still a reason to keep going. Barry's own eyes were wet now. He reached across the small space between them and placed his hand over Morgan's. The touch was warm, steady. "That album kept me alive," Morgan whispered. "When I couldn't see a future, when I couldn't imagine a single reason to wake up the next morning, your voice was there, telling me I wasn't alone." Barry's voice, when he finally spoke, was thick with emotion. "Morgan, I don't have words for what that means to me." "You don't have to say anything," Morgan said quickly. "I just needed you to know. I needed to look you in the eye and tell you that your music, the songs you and your brothers created, mattered in ways you probably never imagined." Barry shook his head slowly, tears now flowing freely. "My brothers and I, we wrote those songs from our hearts. We poured everything we had into them, but we never knew, we could never know where they would land, who they would reach." He squeezed Morgan's hand gently. "After Maurice died, and then Robin, I asked myself so many times if any of it mattered. If the music we made together would outlive us, if it would mean something beyond the charts and the awards." His voice broke slightly. "You've just answered that question." They sat together in silence, two musicians separated by generations and experience, but connected by the invisible thread of melody and meaning. "Can I ask you something?" Barry said after a long moment. "Anything? What happened next after you listened to the album?" Morgan took a shaky breath, smiling through tears. "I picked up my guitar. For the first time in months, I played. I didn't write anything good at first. It was mostly just noise, relearning how my hands worked. But I kept going, and eventually the songs started coming back." "Are you still making music?" "I am," Morgan said. "I put out an EP last year. It's small, independent, nothing like the platform I used to have. But it's honest. And it's mine." Barry's face lit up with genuine joy. "That's wonderful. That's truly wonderful. I don't know if I would have gotten there without Odessa," Morgan said. "Without you." Barry was quiet for a moment, then spoke with careful honesty. "I think you would have. I think the strength was in you all along. Maybe the music just reminded you it was there." Morgan smiled, a real smile that reached all the way to their eyes. "Maybe, but I'm still grateful." "So am I," Barry said. "More than you know." They talked for another 30 minutes, about music, about loss, about the strange and beautiful ways art travels through time. Barry shared stories about writing Odessa with his brothers, the creative risks they took, the critics who dismissed it at the time. "Robin used to say that album was our love letter to ambition," Barry recalled with a soft laugh. "We wanted to prove we could do more than disco, more than pop hits. We wanted to make something that lasted." "You did," Morgan said simply. Eventually, Vanessa knocked gently and reminded them the event would begin in 20 minutes. As they stood, Morgan hesitated. "There's one more thing. Tonight, during the event, they've asked me to speak about this, about what your music meant to me. I hope that's okay." "More than okay," Barry said. "I'm honored. And afterward, I'd like to play something for you. A song I wrote. It's called Lamplight, named after the last track on Odessa. Would that be all right?" Barry's eyes widened. "I would love that." Morgan extended a hand. Barry took it, then pulled Morgan into a brief, heartfelt embrace. "Thank you for finding that record," Barry whispered. "Thank you for making it," Morgan whispered back. Chapter 5. Songs That Changed Lives. The ballroom of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame glowed with warm amber light. 200 guests, musicians, industry veterans, journalists, donors, filled the round tables, their conversations a low hum beneath soft instrumental music playing through the speakers. Barry sat at a table near the front with Richard, feeling uncharacteristically nervous. He'd performed for audiences of thousands, accepted awards on global stages, but this felt different. More intimate, more real. Across the room, Morgan sat with Vanessa Ortiz and 2 other Hall of Fame staff members, fingers tapping rhythmically against a thigh, a telltale sign of anxiety that any musician would recognize. At 7 o'clock sharp, the lights dimmed. Vanessa took the stage, her voice confident and warm as it carried through the room. "Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Songs That Changed Lives. Tonight, we gather to celebrate something we all understand but rarely discuss, the power of music to reach us in our darkest moments and remind us why we're here." Polite applause rippled through the audience. Our first story tonight is about an artist many of you know and another you may not yet. It's about a song written in 1969, discovered in 2019, and the life it saved in between. The screen behind Vanessa lit up with the album cover of Odessa, the three Gibb brothers staring out with serious, artistic intensity. Barry's chest tightened. "Please welcome to the stage, Morgan Ellis." The applause grew louder as Morgan stood and walked toward the stage, each step measured and deliberate. Barry watched, his heart full of something he couldn't quite name: pride, gratitude, connection. Morgan reached the microphone and adjusted it slightly, hands trembling just enough to be visible. "Thank you," Morgan began, voice quiet but clear. "I'm not used to speaking in front of this many people anymore. For a while I wasn't sure I'd ever do it again." A few sympathetic chuckles from the audience. "5 years ago, I was convinced my life was over, not metaphorically, literally. I'd burned every bridge, destroyed every opportunity, and I couldn't see a single reason to keep going." The room fell silent, every eye on Morgan. "I won't go into all the details. Some stories are too personal even for a night like this. But what I will tell you is that on a gray afternoon in Nashville, I walked into a thrift store and found an album I'd never heard before, Odessa by the Bee Gees. The screen shifted to show the vinyl record itself, slightly worn. Beloved. I took it home and put it on, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt understood. The songs on that album, especially Melody Fair, spoke directly to the loneliness and confusion I was drowning in. Morgan's voice grew stronger. Barry Gibb's voice reached across 50 years to tell me I wasn't alone. That pain could become beauty. That there was still a reason to create, to try, to live. Barry wiped at his eyes, not bothering to hide the tears. I listened to that album every day for weeks, and slowly, I started to believe I could pick up my guitar again. I started to believe I had something left to say, and eventually I did. Morgan paused, looking directly at Barry now. I asked Barry here tonight because I needed him to know that his music didn't just entertain me, it saved me, and I wanted to say thank you in person, because some things can't be said any other way. The audience erupted into applause, many visibly moved. Barry stood, his own applause joining theirs, his face a mixture of joy and overwhelming emotion. Morgan smiled, a little embarrassed, a little relieved. "Barry, thank you for being here, and thank you for making music that reminds us we're not alone." Barry nodded, mouthing "thank you" across the distance. "One more thing," Morgan said as the applause began to fade. "I wrote a song about this experience. It's called Lamplight, after the final track on Odessa. I'd like to play it now, if that's okay." Vanessa appeared from the side of the stage carrying an acoustic guitar. Morgan took it with a grateful nod, adjusted the strap, and settled onto a stool positioned center stage. The room fell silent again, expectant. Morgan's fingers found the first chord, a gentle minor progression that hung in the air like a question, and then Morgan began to sing. The song was haunting and beautiful, a meditation on loneliness and rescue, on voices that reach through time to hold us when we're falling. The lyrics spoke of dark rooms and vinyl records, of melodies that become lifelines, of gratitude too deep for ordinary words. Barry listened with his entire being, hearing echoes of his own music woven into Morgan's, not imitation, but conversation, a response across decades. When Morgan reached the bridge, the melody shifted into something brighter, more hopeful. "You didn't know my name, you couldn't see my face, but your voice became the light that led me out of that dark place." Barry's heart swelled. This was why they made music. Not for the fame or the charts or even the awards. For moments like this. for connection, for the chance to matter in someone's life, even if you never knew it. The final chord rang out and faded into silence. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the room exploded with applause, standing, sustained, thunderous. Morgan stood, visibly overwhelmed, tears streaming freely now. Vanessa appeared again to take the guitar, whispering something encouraging. Barry was already moving toward the stage, unable to stay seated any longer. As he reached the steps, Morgan saw him coming and stepped down to meet him halfway. They embraced in front of everyone, two musicians who had saved each other without realizing it, connected by the mysterious and beautiful power of song. "That was extraordinary," Barry said into Morgan's ear. "Truly extraordinary." "I meant every word," Morgan replied. They pulled back, both smiling through tears, and the audience's applause somehow grew even louder. Chapter 6. Echoes and Answers. The formal event concluded an hour later, but the real evening was just beginning. Vanessa had arranged a small private reception in one of the hall's exhibit spaces, a room dedicated to the history of songwriting, surrounded by handwritten lyrics from Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell, and Carole King under glass. Barry and Morgan found themselves standing in front of a display featuring early Bee Gees manuscripts, including the original handwritten lyrics to Love Somebody. "I can't believe you wrote this when you were so young," Morgan said, studying Barry's youthful handwriting from 1967. 20 years old, Barry confirmed. "We were just kids, really. We thought we knew everything about love and heartbreak." He smiled. "We didn't, of course, but we were sincere." "That's what makes it work," Morgan said. "Sincerity. People can tell when you mean it." They moved through the room slowly, drinks in hand, sparkling water for both, a detail neither mentioned but both noticed. Other guests mingled nearby, but a respectful distance was maintained, allowing Barry and Morgan their conversation. "Can I ask you something personal?" Barry said after a moment. "Of course. When you were at your lowest in that apartment in Nashville, did you have anyone, family, friends?" Morgan's expression clouded slightly. "Not really. My parents and I had been estranged for years. They didn't approve of the music career, and then when the addiction issues started, it became easier for everyone to just stop trying. I had friends in the industry, but most of them disappeared when I stopped being successful." Barry nodded sadly. "That's a painful truth about this business. People love you when you're up and forget you when you're down." "Yeah," Morgan agreed. "It taught me who really mattered, though. There was one person, my sound engineer from the early days, a woman named Jackie Ruiz. She kept calling even when I didn't answer. She sent me texts just to let me know she was thinking of me. She never gave up." "Is she still in your life?" Morgan smiled. "She produced my EP, and she's here tonight, actually. I wanted her to meet you." Barry's face brightened. "I'd be honored." Morgan waved across the room, catching Jackie's eye. A woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked black hair and kind eyes, approached, her expression warm and slightly amused. "Jackie Ruiz, this is Barry Gibb," Morgan said. "Barry, Jackie is the reason I'm still making music." Jackie laughed and extended her hand. "That's generous, but not entirely true. Morgan's the reason Morgan is still making music. I just reminded them they had it in them." Barry shook her hand firmly. "Sometimes that's everything. Thank you for not giving up on this one." "Never crossed my mind," Jackie said simply, glancing at Morgan with affection. "I knew what they were capable of. They just needed time to remember." The three of them talked for a while, about the challenges of independent music production, about the changing industry, about the strange alchemy that happens when the right song finds the right person at the right time. Eventually, Jackie excused herself to speak with some colleagues, leaving Barry and Morgan alone again. They settled into a quiet corner, sitting on a bench beneath a massive photograph of a 1970s recording studio. "You know," Barry said thoughtfully, "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about how Odessa reached you when you needed it most." "Yes?" "Robin, Maurice and we argued about that album more than any other. The label wanted us to make another pop record after the success we'd had in the late 60s. but we wanted to push ourselves, to take risks, to make something deeper. Morgan listened intently. When it came out, the critics were harsh. They said it was pretentious, self-indulgent. It didn't sell as well as our previous albums. For a while, we thought we'd made a terrible mistake. Barry's eyes grew distant with memory. Robin especially took it hard. He'd poured so much of himself into those songs. I remember him saying, "What if we made something nobody wants?" "But you didn't," Morgan said quietly. "You made something somebody needed, even if it took 50 years to find them." Barry looked at Morgan, his expression full of wonder. "That's exactly right. And hearing you say that, hearing your song tonight, it's given me a new understanding of my own work." "Eh, how so?" "I've spent years thinking about legacy, about whether the music would matter after we're gone. But tonight, you showed me that legacy isn't about being remembered by millions. It's about reaching one person in a moment when they need it most." Morgan's eyes filled with tears again. "You've reached so many more than one." "Perhaps," Barry allowed, "but tonight, the one that mattered was you." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling around them like a warm blanket. "What are your plans now?" Barry asked. "With your music, I mean." Morgan exhaled slowly. "Keep making it, I suppose. Keep being honest. I have some songs I'm working on for a full-length album. Jackie thinks we can get it out by next year. I'd love to hear it when it's ready." "Really? Really?" Barry said firmly. "And I mean that. I want to follow what you're doing. I want to see where your music goes." Morgan looked stunned. That would mean everything to me." Barry pulled out his phone, a simple gesture that made him seem suddenly more human, less legendary. "Give me your number and your email. Let's stay in touch." They exchanged information, both smiling at the surreal normalcy of it. "You know," Barry said as he put his phone away, "I came here tonight thinking I was doing someone a favor, showing up to listen to a story. But you've given me something far greater." "What's that?" "Hope," Barry said simply. "Hope that the music my brothers and I made still matters. Hope that the years we spent in studios arguing over harmonies and searching for the perfect melody weren't in vain." He placed a hand on Morgan's shoulder. "You've reminded me why we do this, why any of us do this. Thank you for that gift." Morgan couldn't speak, could only nod, overcome with emotion. The reception wound down near midnight. Guests began to drift away, offering handshakes and congratulations as they departed. Barry and Morgan found themselves among the last to leave, reluctant to let the evening end. As they walked together toward the exit, Morgan said quietly, "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and this will have been a dream." Barry chuckled. "If it is, we're having the same one." Outside, the Cleveland night was cool and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. A car was waiting to take Barry back to his hotel. "Safe travels," Morgan said, "and thank you again for everything." Barry pulled Morgan into one more embrace. "No, thank you. You've given me more than you know." As the car pulled away, Barry looked back through the window. Morgan stood on the sidewalk, illuminated by the glow of the Hall of Fame, waving. Barry waved back, his heart full. Chapter 7. Full Circle. 6 months later, October 2024. The music industry moves quickly, but some connections transcend the usual rhythms of promotion and publicity. Over the months following their meeting in Cleveland, Barry and Morgan developed an unlikely friendship. Calls every few weeks, emails sharing new songs or old memories, a genuine mutual respect that felt effortless and right. Barry kept his promise to follow Morgan's work. When the full-length album, titled Thrift Store Salvation, was released in September 2024, Barry was among the first to listen. He called Morgan immediately after finishing it. "It's brilliant," he said without preamble. "Absolutely brilliant. Every song feels like truth." Morgan, sitting in Jackie's studio in Los Angeles, nearly dropped the phone. "You really think so?" "I know so," Barry replied. "I've been in this business long enough to recognize honesty when I hear it. This album is going to reach people, Morgan. People who need it. The album did reach people. Reviews were strong, praising Morgan's vulnerability and musical craftsmanship. Sales were modest but steady. Most importantly, messages began arriving, fans sharing how specific songs had helped them through breakups, grief, recovery, loneliness. Morgan read each one carefully, overwhelmed by the echo of their own experience with Odessa. Music traveling through time and space to reach someone who needed it, the circle completing itself. December 2024, Miami, Florida. Barry invited Morgan to Miami for the holidays, a casual suggestion that became a genuine plan. Morgan arrived 2 days before Christmas, greeted at the airport by Barry himself, tanned and relaxed in linen pants and a white shirt. "Welcome to Florida," Barry said warmly, pulling Morgan into a hug. No snow, but plenty of sunshine. They spent the days leading up to Christmas in easy companionship. Barry showed Morgan his home studio, where walls were lined with instruments and memories. They played music together. Old standards, Bee Gees classics, some of Morgan's new songs. Barry's voice, still powerful and expressive at 77, blended beautifully with Morgan's rawer, earthier tone. On Christmas Eve, they sat on Barry's terrace overlooking Biscayne Bay, the water reflecting the lights of distant boats and homes. "I've been thinking about something," Barry said, swirling the ice in his glass of soda water. "What's that?" "For years after my brothers died, I struggled with performing our songs. Every time I sang them, I felt their absence. It was painful." Morgan listened, saying nothing. "But lately," Barry continued, "I've started to feel them differently. Not as absence, but as presence, like they're still here in the music we made together." He looked at Morgan. "Meeting you, hearing your story, seeing how our music lived on in ways we never imagined, it's helped me make peace with that." Morgan's eyes shone. "I'm glad. They deserve to be remembered with joy, not just sadness." "They do," Barry agreed. "And so does the music." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle lap of water against the seawall. "I have something for you," Barry said suddenly, standing. "Wait here." He disappeared inside and returned a few minutes later, carrying a worn vinyl record sleeve. "This," he said, handing it to Morgan, "is my personal copy of Odessa, the one I kept from the original pressing in 1969. Morgan's hands trembled as they took it. "Barry, I can't—" "You can," Barry interrupted gently. "And you should. That album found you when you needed it. It brought you back to music. It brought you to me. It deserves to stay with you." Morgan opened the sleeve carefully. Inside, the vinyl was pristine, clearly well-loved and well-maintained. On the inner sleeve, in fresh ink, Barry had written, "To Morgan, thank you for reminding me why we make music. Your friend always, Barry." Morgan's vision blurred with tears. "I don't have words." "You don't need them," Barry said softly. "Just promise me you'll keep making your music. Keep being honest. Keep reaching people who need to hear what you have to say." "I promise," Morgan whispered. They embraced, two musicians bound by gratitude and understanding, by the mysterious ways that art connects us across time and circumstance. March 2025, Full Circle. When Morgan's album was nominated for a Grammy in the Best Americana Album category, Barry sent a congratulatory text within minutes of the announcement. Morgan, still in shock, called back immediately. "Can you believe this?" Morgan said, voice high with disbelief. Barry laughed. "I absolutely can. I told you that album was special. Will you come to the ceremony?" "I wouldn't miss it," Barry said without hesitation. The Grammy Awards in February 2025 were held at the Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles. Morgan didn't win. The award went to a veteran folk artist with decades of acclaim, but it didn't matter. Walking the red carpet, being interviewed, sitting in the audience surrounded by musical legends, it all felt surreal. But the best moment came before the show, in the backstage area where nominees and presenters gathered. Morgan was talking with Jackie when a familiar voice called out, "There's my favorite Grammy nominee." Barry approached with his arms open, looking elegant in a tailored black suit. They hugged tightly, both grinning. "You look incredible," Morgan said. So do you, Barry replied. This is your night, win or lose. You've already accomplished something remarkable. Several other artists noticed their interaction, curious. Barry, sensing an opportunity, raised his voice slightly. Everyone, I want you to meet Morgan Ellis. Extraordinary artist, even better human being. Introductions were made, hands shaken, compliments exchanged. Morgan felt welcomed into a community that had once seemed impossibly distant. Later, during a commercial break, Morgan leaned over to Barry. Thank you for this. All of it. Thank you, Barry said simply. You saved my music, Morgan. You reminded me it matters. 1 year later, April 2026. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame invited Morgan and Barry to return for the anniversary of Songs That Changed Lives. This time they would perform together, a duet of melody fair and lamplight, bridging generations and experiences. The rehearsal took place the afternoon before the event, in the same building where they'd first met. But now, standing on stage together, the nervousness had transformed into joy. Barry's voice, still achingly beautiful, wove through the opening lines of Melody Fair. Morgan's harmonies joined, complementing and supporting, creating something new from something old. When they transitioned into Lamplight, Morgan took the lead, Barry's voice becoming the foundation. The result was transcendent, a conversation in music, a testament to survival and gratitude and the enduring power of song. Jackie, watching from the audience seats, wiped tears from her eyes. After the rehearsal, Barry and Morgan sat on the edge of the stage, legs dangling. How do you feel about tomorrow? Barry asked. Grateful, Morgan said. Nervous, excited, all of it. Me too, Barry admitted. Every time I think I've done everything I can do in music, something new surprises me. Morgan smiled. That's the beauty of it, isn't it? It never really ends. The songs keep traveling, keep finding people. I keep saving lives, Barry added quietly. Yeah, Morgan agreed. Keep saving lives. They sat together in the empty theater, surrounded by the ghosts of 1,000 performances and the promise of tomorrows. Outside, the sun set over Lake Erie, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Inside, two musicians, separated by decades but united by melody, prepared to share their story with the world once more. Because some songs never truly end, they just find new voices to carry them forward. Artus. Epilogue. The performance the following night was everything they'd hoped for, moving, powerful, perfectly imperfect, in the way that live music always is. The audience gave them a standing ovation that lasted nearly 5 minutes. Backstage afterward, surrounded by well-wishers and press, Morgan and Barry found a quiet moment alone. You know what I keep thinking about? Morgan said. What's that? That day in the thrift store. If I'd walked past that box of records, if I'd chosen a different album, if any single thing had been different. But it wasn't, Barry interrupted gently. You found what you needed when you needed it. That's not coincidence. That's music doing what music does best, Morgan nodded slowly. Reaching through the darkness and reminding us we're not alone, Barry finished. They stood together, two people whose lives had intersected in the most unexpected and beautiful way, bound forever by $3 and a scratched vinyl record and the mysterious grace of art. To the next chapter, Morgan said, raising an imaginary glass. To the next chapter, Barry echoed, smiling, and somewhere in a dimension only music can reach, the harmonies continued. Endless, eternal, saving lives, one note at a time. The end,